The broadcast of the Minneapolis Heritage Preservation Committee meeting will now begin.
Good afternoon. Welcome to this live broadcast of our virtual meeting of the May 19th, 2020 regular meeting of the Minneapolis Heritage Preservation Commission. This meeting includes the remote participation of members as authorized under Minnesota statutes section 13D.021 due to the declared local health pandemic. For the record, my name is Madeline Sundberg, and I serve as chair of the Minneapolis Heritage Preservation Commission. I will now call this meeting to order and ask the clerk to call the roll so we may verify the presence of a quorum.
Bjornberg.
Present.
Fritz. Howard.
Present.
Kling.
Present.
Johnson.
Present.
Mack. Sandbolt.
Present.
Stady. Sundberg.
Present.
Vandereyck. And since I know he was on the call earlier, Stady, are you there? Okay, well, that is 6 members.
So we need Stady for quorum, don't we?
I believe we do not, since it's a 10-member commission.
Okay.
So technically we can go ahead, and I'm sure he'll join us shortly.
Okay, thank you. Let the record reflect we do have quorum. With that, we will proceed to our agenda, a copy of which was posted for public access to the city's legislative information management system, which is available at lims.minneapolismn.gov. So our first order of business is to adopt the agenda for the meeting. We'll work off the agenda that was available online. I will go through the agenda and sort out which items will be continued to a future meeting, which items will be discussed, what items will be put on a consent agenda to be approved as recommended by staff without further discussion. So item number 4, that is 2316 4th Avenue South, Ward 10. It's a certificate of appropriateness to demolish a non-contributing resource and construct a multifamily residential building. That item will be discussed. Item number 5 is Lyndhurst Residential Historic District, Ward 13. That item will be continued to the June 9th, 2020 meeting. Item number 6 is Father Hennepin Bluff Park Improvement Project at 420 Main Street Southeast, Ward 3, and that item will be discussed. So the proposed agenda is item 4, 2316 4th Avenue South, and Father Hennepin Bluff Park Improvement Project will have staff presentation, public comment, commission discussion, and action. And item 5, Lyndhurst Residential Historic District, will be continued to the June 9th, 2020 meeting. Commissioners, may I have a motion to approve the proposed agenda?
Howard moves.
Thank you, Commissioner Howard. Is there a second?
Bjornberg seconds.
Thank you, Commissioner Bjornberg. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, I will ask the clerk to call the roll on the motion.
Bjornberg.
Aye.
Howard.
Aye.
Kling.
Aye.
Johnson.
Aye.
Sandbolt.
Aye.
Sundberg.
Aye.
And it looks like Stady has joined us. Are you there?
Yes, aye. Thank you.
We're voting on the approval of the agenda. Did you catch that part?
Yes, I approve it. I vote yes.
Okay, wonderful.
Thank
Thank you, Commissioner Stady.
That's 7. Thank you.
Yep, thank you. The agenda is approved. Our next order of business will be to approve the minutes from our May 19th, 2020 meeting. May I have a motion to approve, from our May 5th, 2020 meeting. May I have a motion to approve those minutes?
Howard so moves.
Thank you, Commissioner Howard. Is there a second?
Johnson seconds.
Oh, thank you, Commissioner Johnson. With that, I'll ask the clerk to call a roll on the motion.
Bjornberg,
Aye.
Howard,
Aye.
Kling,
Aye.
Johnson,
Aye.
Sambolt,
Aye.
Stady,
Aye.
Sundberg.
Aye.
That's 7. Thank you.
Thank you. The minutes are approved. Before I open the hearing to the public comments, let me summarize the process for the public hearing in the virtual format. The process for the public hearing is as follows. First, we will act on items to be withdrawn. Then we will act on items to be continued. Then we will act on the consent agenda we just set, which there are no items. Once items on the consent agenda are approved, we don't have any. Then we will take each remaining agenda item in order. First, the planning staff will present its report and the commissioners may ask questions of staff. Then we will hear from the applicant and commissioners may ask questions of the applicant. After that, I will open the public hearing and we will invite public comment. We will be taking speakers in the order they are pre-registered. If there are any, speakers will be limited to 2 minutes. We ask that after your name is called, you state your name and address for the record, and then proceed with your comments. After we've completed the list of any pre-registered speakers, we'll see if there are any other speakers in the queue who may have called in. In order to activate your microphones, you'll need to press *6 on your phone. So again, we'll take the list of the pre-registered speakers in order and then open the floor to any other speakers who may be in the queue. After public comments are complete, I will close the hearing. Commissioners will deliberate and act on the application before us. So, items to be continued. May I have a motion to continue item number 5, the Lyndhurst Residential Historic District, Ward 13, to the June 9th, 2020 meeting?
So moved. Stady.
Thank you, Commissioner Stady. Is there a second?
Second, Commissioner Sambolt.
Thank you, Commissioner Sambolt. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, would the clerk please call the roll?
Bjornberg,
Aye.
Howard,
Aye.
Johnson,
Aye.
Kling,
Aye.
Sambolt,
Aye.
Stady,
Aye.
Sundberg.
Aye.
That's 7. Thank you.
Thank you. That item is continued. This brings us to our discussion items. Our first item is number 4, 2316 4th Avenue South, Ward 10. The staff report will be presented by John Smalley.
Good evening, Madam Chair, members of the Commission. My name is John Smalley, and I'm very pleased to be before you remotely this evening to brief you on a certificate of appropriateness application to demolish a non-contributing resource and construct a multifamily residential building at 2316 4th Avenue South in the Washburn Fair Oaks Historic District. Next slide, please. Here you can see different views of the building on the left. The I-35W sound wall in the upper right side of the upper picture. The subject property is a single-story concrete masonry unit commercial building with a brick facade designed in a vernacular style. This building is located mid-block on 4th Avenue South between 22nd and 24th Streets East, immediately west of the I-35W sound wall on the eastern edge of the Washburn Fair Oaks Historic District. This This district is locally significant for its turn-of-the-century residential architecture, ranging from opulent mansions to modest homes. Constructed as prominent Minneapolitans moved further from the city's expanding commercial core, beginning in the 1870s. The subject building was built between 1948 and 1953, well outside of the district's period of significance, and is commercial infill inside a turn-of-the-century residential historic district. Therefore, the property is considered a non-contributing resource. The building was originally built by Crawford Mers Construction to serve as the company's headquarters, but it now serves as the headquarters for a real estate development company owned by the applicant. Crawford Mers Construction does not appear to be historically significant. Founded in 1886 by John W. Crawford, the firm's original focus was and remains remodeling work. Their list of marquee projects is almost entirely tenant improvements, not new buildings. This firm has not previously been recognized as a master builder by the Minneapolis Heritage Preservation Commission, nor does staff recommend it be recognized as such at this time. This single-story building is very simple construction with no decorative features and is not evidence of the work of a master builder. As discussed at the January 30th, 2020 joint meeting of the Heritage Preservation Commission and the City Planning Commission's Committee of the Whole, the applicant proposes to construct a 74-unit multifamily residential building with 24 enclosed first-floor parking spaces accessed via the alley. Thank you. The proposed building possesses a number of features that make it compatible with, yet differentiated from, the character of the surrounding historic district. Next slide, please. Those characteristics are massing that's 5 units wide by 5 units deep, dark brown brick walls accented by tan brick detailing, 4 stories, simple sheet metal parapet caps, walkout units with metal canopies, roll-up garage doors, large window openings, and extensive sections of shiplap, fiber cement siding, and burnished concrete masonry unit block, which the applicant has moved exclusively to the sides and rear of the building in response to your conceptual review comments. Staff has received one comment letter shared with you today by our clerk, which requests denial of the project. As conditioned, the proposal meets all findings required by the Heritage Preservation Regulations, with the following exceptions. In terms of compliance with the Washburn Fair Oaks Historic District Design Guidelines, which state that new brick should match existing brick in terms of brick size, texture, and color, as well as the existing mortar color, bonding pattern, and width and type of joint. Staff would note that to ensure compatible differentiation from contributing resources within the district, the proposal utilizes modern brown and tan brick set in traditional bonding patterns. In the absence of mortar joint details, we'd recommend conditioning the project to ensure mortar joints are 1/4 to 1/2 inch in width, concave in shape, and light gray in color. In terms of compliance with the Secretary of the Interior standards for the treatment of historic properties, in particular Rehabilitation Standard Number 9, which states that the new work will be differentiated from the old and will be compatible with the historic materials, features, size, scale, and proportion and massing of the property. Staff notes that 74 dark bronze PTAC air conditioning units and heat pumps, one for each micro-dwelling unit in the building, are proposed to penetrate the exterior walls of the building. In the rendering before you, I should say in the elevations before you, you can see some of these PTAC units. They have, they show up on the plans, their vents show up as the sort of the black squares at the base of a number of window openings. And you'll note that they are mostly removed, have mostly been removed from the front of the building, except in the central U-shaped courtyard opening. Creation of 74 separate louvered grills and exterior building walls, each of which will be nearly 5 square feet in area, really challenges the idea that the building will be compatible with the character of this historic district, developed predominantly before any sort of forced air heating and cooling systems were utilized in the district. PTAC units should be eliminated from the front of the building as the project is conditioned. For these reasons, staff recommends the Heritage Preservation Commission approve the certificate of appropriateness, subject to the conditions of approval listed in the staff report. I'm available for any questions you may have, and I know the applicant is available and would like to speak as well.
Thank you for the report. Commissioners, are there any questions for staff? I'm not seeing any questions at the moment, John, but we'll let you know if something comes up during the discussion. I will now open the public hearing for this item. It sounds like the applicant is here and would like to speak. If you could press *6 on your phone to activate your microphone so we can hear you, and state your name and address for the record. Is the applicant there?
Mr. Nielsen, please press *6 to speak. If the applicant would like to speak, please press *6. Mr. Scott Nelson, *6 to unmute.
Chair Sundberg, that was our only registered caller for this item.
Okay, thank you. I'm wondering, is it possible to contact the applicant through different means and see if they're having difficulty getting in?
I can give the applicant a call, Madam Chair.
Okay, thank you, John. In the meantime, perhaps we could start our discussion. Commissioners, do you have any initial thoughts on the application? Commissioner Howard.
I just wanted to acknowledge the letter that we received today, the public comment. It was a neighborhood resident who has concerns about the design, and I just wanted to acknowledge that I have similar concerns about the design in general, but in my review of everything, it still appears to meet the guidelines that we have for the district. And so although I have personal feelings about the architectural design, in the end, this commission can only go by the guidelines that we've been given for the district as part of our making any kind of decisions on that design.
Thank you, Commissioner Howard. Commissioner Sandvold?
Hi, I just wanted to comment that I think the existing building that's there, I don't really have any problem with demolishing that. I think we all believe that it's not a contributing resource and that that part of the project is okay. And looking at the design for the new construction, I was curious, is there somewhere in the packet, or maybe either John or the applicant has a photo of those PTAC units installed? Maybe a photo of a similar louver or whatever the finish on those is going to be?
I think that is a good question. When either of them makes it back to the call, maybe we can get an answer on that.
Yeah.
Madam Chair, members of the commission, this is John Smoley again. The applicant did not provide, nor did we request a, any kind of evidence or photo of the PTAC units installed in a building. These particular units, they do have a spec sheet in the packet itself, and I can tell you which page that appears on if you would like. You'll at least get the specifications for the unit itself. Is that something you'd like?
I think that might be useful. Oh, maybe I'm looking at it. Is it on page 70? Is that?
I did see the spec sheet in there. I was just hoping to see a photo of a similar application.
No, I'm sorry, that is not in the application packet.
Thank you, John. Did you have any luck reaching the applicant?
No, I'm afraid I did not.
I'm seeing
The
somebody
caller's just
trying to get in.
joining now.
Yeah.
Caller, if Mr. Nelson, if you'd like to make a public comment, you can begin your public comment. Please press *6 to unmute.
Hello, can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Oh, thank you. Sorry, I was on before. I hit *6 a couple of times and it wouldn't let me in, so I ended up kind of redialing in order to join. So I missed whatever was said for the last maybe four or 5 minutes. But if I could just speak to our issue, and is that appropriate now?
Yes, I think if you can just speak to the application. Yeah.
Okay, great. I'm going to focus my presentation on our basic design concept and our request to remove condition 2, which prohibits the use of the PTAC units in the windows of the side-facing front units that John Smoley showed you at the end of his presentation. That's our one issue. We're in concurrence with everything else and the brick details and the things of that nature. We went to great care to design a building that fits within the context of the Fair Oaks district, and we believe even though our site's sort of on the edge of that district, the site that's shown as he went through on images 4 and 5, we really don't have any of the buildings for which the building was that the district was formed from right in our immediate area. But this is kind of a groundbreaking project. It's probably the first new apartment building built in this district in decades, and we designed it to be a modern interpretation of the design aesthetic found on the blocks to the west end of the district, and a number of the features that we thought were important in this was the brick. I think the buildings on the west that are memorable and shown in our images are really about brick and brick detailing, and we tried to design a building that exemplified this and did some nice detail, not just all brick, but nice detail that was shown on the front of the building. And as such, we put a lot more brick into this building than we do in buildings of similar size that we do for these clients or others. And this, because we're going a 4-story building with brick on the fronts, the recesses, and the sides, this adds significantly to the cost of the building. But we thought, given the appropriateness of the building and given that this is kind of a pioneer project, that it was the appropriate thing to do in the Fair Oaks district. The location, the issue though really is this location adjacent to the 35W sound wall will not quite bring in the high rents of some of the other parts of the neighborhood. but we're going to begin to create a neighborhood. So in order to keep the cost of rent for these units as low as possible, all of the units are studios, and they range in size from 365 to 424 square feet. And these units need to be very efficiently designed, not just for space utilization, but also for cost. And the PTAC unit integrated into the window frame is by far the most efficient and least expensive mechanical system that we can do for a building of this size. To add another system would be, or two systems to replace 8 units of our building with a completely different system would be extremely expensive, and then we'll begin to compromise some of the things that we can do otherwise on the outside of the building with some of the brick and some of the brick detailing that we provided. When we discussed this project at the joint COW meeting in January, the design was generally well regarded, and there was a number of suggestions made to add some additional brick to the center of the building, which we did. There was a suggestion to color the siding portions of the building so that it matched the brick. We also did that, which you would see in the elevations that were presented. And there was also some discussions about the PTAC integration that we could make, if we could make the windows the same size that integrated the PTACs along the sides, that would help make them less noticeable. So we did that as well during that discussion. But during that meeting, there wasn't any objection to the concept of using PTACs for this building. That's one of the things I wanted to mention. We believe the main thing that will be noticeable about this building, I think it's sort of exemplified with the renderings we have on images 16, 15, 16, and 17 on the outside. And we really think it's the brick that people will notice here. And we think the brick used in different details and with different patterns will be the thing that most people will notice coming up and down the sidewalks, and that the recesses of the buildings and will not be with the PTAC units integrated will not be as noticeable because of that. And we think it's designed to meet the standards, the requirements of the Fair Oaks District as submitted. I'm more than available for questions about any of these concepts or anything else, but basically we would respectfully request that the condition of approval number 2 as listed in the staff report be deleted from the approval recommendation. So thank you.
Thank you for your comments. I guess I just want to clarify, at least in our agendas, it's condition number 3 that is about the PTAC. Okay. No, so that's the one you're concerned about, correct?
Yes, I am. Correct. Okay. Yeah.
I think the only comments you missed were actually about the PTAC units, and there was some concern about what they look like. So I guess to kind of follow that question, it sounds like they're going to be a dark bronze colors. So would it be accurate to say they're just going to be sort of a dark rectangle at the bottom of the window?
It's actually black. If you look at the renderings, they'll match the window frames. That's the critical element of them, is that it actually completely matches the frame of the window itself, and is kind of recessed, so it sort of flushes out with the glass and matches the window frame.
And it's not possible to move those few that are on the front over to the side. The units don't turn the corner. Is that the problem?
No. If you look at the floor plan of the units on sheet, I'm going to say that's sheet 9. They're all clearly indicated. So we've gone to great pains to make sure there aren't any on the front, on the 4th Street side of the building. They're always on the sides or the interior center, if you will.
Okay, I think that answers the question. Are there other questions for the applicant? I'm not seeing any. Thank you for commenting. I just want to check there's nobody else who is called in on this application, correct?
That is correct, Chair Sundberg.
Thank you. Then I will close the public hearing and open it up to commissioner discussion. Are there any additional concerns or comments from commissioners? Does somebody want to make a motion? I guess it seems like we should do some discussion on this item 3, condition 3, since the applicant wishes to have that one removed. So that would be those few PTAC units that are in the center portion of the building pushed back. Commissioner Sandbolt.
I did actually go online and found some of the louvers and the black kind of louvered that would go over the PTAC unit in those windows. And I don't really think that they're going to be that offensive. I really appreciate that you removed them from the kind of facade that's closest to the street there, and I think that will help a lot. So personally, I'm leaning towards allowing those PTAC units on those 3 units in the middle of the building.
Thank you, Commissioner Sandbolt. Commissioner Johnson?
Yeah, I actually want to echo what Commissioner Sandbolt said. I really appreciate that the applicant is putting the additional brick on the facade. I think there's too many apartment buildings going up in the city that are just using like really cheap building materials. So I appreciate that, and their willingness to remove the PTAC units from the front. I know there are some ways to mitigate PTAC units from view. I guess my biggest fear is, that PTAC units are going to be like in 10 years what the AC units hanging out of windows are today. But given that they're going to be black and match the window frame, I'm kind of inclined to allow them.
Thank you, Commissioner Johnson. I think I agree that I don't think it would be a disaster to have, I think it's 6 of those 2 stories with the 3 units in the center with the PTAC units showing. I'm looking at their floor plan and I'm seeing that it would probably be difficult for them to, without reconfiguring the floor plan, move those PTAC units to some other location for those units. Are there other commissioners who have thoughts on that condition? Well, I don't. Oh, Commissioner Bjornberg.
I would just kind of echo what the last few comments have said. I think that moving them from the main facade and keeping those few is okay. And I appreciate kind of all the work that has gone into trying to be respectful of the historic district.
Thank you, Commissioner Bjornberg. So I'm wondering if somebody would like to make a motion and perhaps reword condition 3 to allow PTAC units on the recessed portion of the front facade only.
Madam Chair, this is John Smoley. If I may, striking condition 3 should allow the proposal to proceed as proposed, which, from what I understand, sounds like all commissioners who have commented thus far are in support of.
Okay, thank you, John. Commissioner Sandbolt?
Yes, I'll make a motion to approve the certificate of appropriateness subject to the conditions 1, 2, 4, and 5 as listed in the agenda.
Thank you, Commissioner Sandbolt. Is there a second?
Johnson seconds.
Thank you, Commissioner Johnson. Is there any further discussion? Not seeing any, would the clerk please call the roll?
Bjornberg.
Aye.
Howard.
Aye.
Johnson.
Aye.
Kling.
Aye.
Sandbolt.
Aye.
Stady.
Aye.
Sundberg.
Aye.
That's 7. Thank you.
Thank you. That motion passes. The applicant can speak to staff tomorrow about next steps. I think we're all excited to see some development go into this area. So that concludes the public hearing items, and that leaves us with item 6, Father Hennepin Bluff Improvement Project. I'm recusing myself, so I'm going to hand this meeting over to Commissioner Howard.
Thank you, Chair Sundberg. For the record, I'm Barbara Howard. I'm Vice Chair of the Minneapolis Heritage Preservation Commission. Our discussion item is number 6, Father Hennepin Bluff Park Improvement Project, 420 Main Street Southeast, Ward 3. The staff memo is presented by Robert Skolecki.
Good evening, Commissioners. I'm Rob Skolecki, City Planner in the Historic Preservation section of CPED. Staff has received preliminary plans to forward to the HPC for comment regarding proposed alterations to Father Hennepin Bluff Park, located at 420 Main Street Southeast in the St. Anthony Falls Historic District. The project representatives are present today, and they're looking for feedback and questions regarding their initial proposal for the design. Staff drafted a memo that was sent to you along with the preliminary materials that the project representatives have forwarded, and just wanted to point out a few points to mention with this proposal. The project representatives are proposing a rather large-scale alteration of the park, which includes a new performance pavilion stage, additional auxiliary structures, a playground, new landscaping with altered pathways, and removal and also new placement of select vegetation. It's also important to note, as you all probably know, that Father Hennepin Bluff serves as the eastern entryway to the Stone Arch Bridge, which is among the city's most recognizable historic landmarks. The proposed alterations may have the potential to affect the feeling of this portion of the St. Anthony Falls Historic District. So based upon this, staff is requesting feedback from the HPC on a few items, which include the proposed positioning of the new bandshell, the effect of the performance area placement and what that might have on that section of the park, just the overall alteration in landscape design, the park's association to the Mississippi River and how proposed alterations may affect that, as well as if it is believed that further archaeological assessments may be warranted based on the study produced by the project representatives. With that, I will be available for any questions or comments, but I think it might be more important that you would direct those at the representatives who are available to talk and address questions and comments at this time. Thanks.
Thank you for the staff report. Does the commissioners have any questions specifically for staff before we turn it over to the applicants? I'm not seeing any from commissioners. I do have a question. Will this come in before us as a certificate of appropriateness in the future? Is this in preparation for that? Or what is the trigger here for our review? Is it just being within the district?
Correct, yeah, and understanding, I believe the project representatives will be able to probably articulate this best, but just understanding that this is a pretty major alteration to this portion of the district, and a project of this scale would likely come to you eventually as a certificate of appropriateness if this does carry through at this point. So yes.
Thank you. I'm not seeing any other commissioners with questions. If the applicant is here and would like to speak, you need to press *6 to activate your microphone.
Hi, this is Charlene Royce with Hess Royce and Company, 100 North 1st Street, Minneapolis. And we have been working with the Park Board and the project team on this. Mostly, well, John Duesman from the Park Board is going to be our sort of ringleader on this in terms of kind of responding to your questions. But I did want to just state that in response to what Rob Skolecki said, we will be coming forward with a certificate of appropriateness when the plans are further along. Right now, we just want to make sure that what's being designed is sensitive to the area, and that we get your input early on before design decisions are cast in stone. I will say that the design is evolving, and our team can speak to that. The park is pretty beat up if anybody's been there recently, and there have been major changes in use patterns since it was designed, with the opening of the Stone Arch Bridge, which just seemed like a wonderful pipe dream at the time that the park was originally developed. And then, of course, the increase of residential and other use in the neighborhood. And it's been way successful. And so just kind of like a building needs a upgrade every once in a while after lots of hard use and changes in life patterns. So too does the landscape.
Yeah, and if it's okay, I can chime in here too. This is John Duesman, the project manager from the Minneapolis Park Board, and I can give just a little bit of more context about the project itself to the commission. So thank you for allowing us to be on the agenda tonight. I appreciate that. And just to kind of build off of what Charlene was just describing, talking about, yeah, right. The neighborhood definitely has changed significantly in the time since this park was built. And the park has not seen any improvements since its original, design and construction back in the 70s from the Sasaki plans. And just with the heavy, intense use that is drawn to the area, not only from people within the neighborhood, but more regionally as well. We know that from park counts that this is one of the most visited areas within the park system. The park just needs definitely needs some upkeep and some improvements made to kind of address the changes in time. And so, part of the Park Board's process is when we start a project, it kind of takes several steps to kind of get things going, and then when we do, we kind of really kind of build upon community engagement to really kind of understand what the needs are from the community, the neighborhood that use a park. So we spent a lot of time early on in the project reaching out to the community. We set up what we call the Community Advisory Committee, which is, our board appoints several of those members to kind of be on the committee to help work with everybody and kind of develop what that concept will ultimately be for a park. And so there's a lot of time early on in kind of late 2018 and early 2019 during which the community engagement process really kind of was being developed and undertaken to the point where we really did come up with this concept plan. And I'm hoping that you've all kind of seen it. As I look at sort of the presentation material I have, for me, it's page 8 of 111 pages. I don't know if that's the same for you or not, but it's the schematic design concept that really shows the improvements that we're looking to do. And so it is a bit of a swing and change and from what the original 1978 design from Sasaki was. But we really, again, kind of built the plan off of this concept plan off of what the community was looking for in terms of improvements there. So some of the kind of the key things that came about from that process was circulation was a big item that needed to be addressed, just because of the amount of foot traffic, bike traffic, Segway traffic that circumvents through the area. We really needed to kind of figure out a way to sort of better make use of the park and make it so that the park is safe for people to use it, and that we can kind of control in the best manners that we can kind of the flow of movement in and out of the park. Again, because when the Stone Arch Bridge became open to the pedestrian traffic, that really kind of changed the dynamic of the park, because it wasn't open back in the 70s, or the Stone Arch Bridge wasn't open for public use back when this park was first developed. So circulation is definitely a big issue that we're addressing here with the plan. Safety with lighting is another thing. Right now the park kind of has different light fixtures throughout the park, and they're not as spaced out as probably as best that they can to kind of provide more of a uniform lighting level for the park and park use later on in the evening. So we wanted to address that. Performance and gathering, as you probably had heard Rob talk about and mention, that's kind of a big piece with this, and that's in the area of the plan, kind of located closer to the Stone Arch Bridge. We really kind of need to address, again, kind of the activity that happens in the park, and a lot of what happens there not only is just from neighborhood use, but we also see a lot of events that will take place in the park, just running events that can kind of start and finish in that area. Gathering events that are annual events that have been going on in the park for 20 plus years, trying to find a way to sort of meet those needs a little bit better, because as we just see more and more people in the park, and kind of the existing kind of performance Bandshell area, well, not Bandshell, but performance area right now really has kind of met its match, I guess, if you will, in terms of kind of being able to suit the needs that kind of go on in the park. So that's kind of another big piece. And then sort of to address the change in the character of the neighborhood. We have so many younger families that now live in and around the park, but again, kind of addressing that regional aspect where we have even families that come to this area that don't live around here, but have kids. Giving them the opportunity to play was an important piece that the community voiced during community engagement. So we are proposing to construct a playground within the park, and playgrounds, can be of many sizes, many shapes, many colors, but we call this a nature play in our concept plan, because we don't see this as a big, bright, 20, 30 foot tall structures that, would kind of be dominant features in the park, but we call it nature play because play has changed through the years, and we see things that are used more naturally, and now we use rocks and logs and stumps, those kinds of things that might sound kind of odd to people, but those are becoming more and more popular for kids to play on. And so kind of not introducing something that really is kind of in stark contrast to the character of the area, but something that would really kind of lend itself more to kind of fitting in along the bluff and within the heavy vegetation kind of within the park. So there's kind of just a very simplistic view of the concept plan. Again, sort of, after the concept plan was kind of voted on by the community and kind of developed by the community effort, we did take that to our Board of Commissioners to review and approve, and they did approve that concept plan that you're seeing here in this presentation material tonight back in, I think it was in June of 2019. So, it's kind of Charlene was indicating earlier, before we really start building upon this concept plan and kind of moving things a little bit around to kind of fit and work, we wanted to get the commission's feedback on what we're looking at doing here to kind of make sure we're going to do something that ultimately does fit with the character and the history of the site itself. And so with that, I guess I'm going to stop with what I'm kind of describing here and just let you know that not only is Charlene on the call, but our landscape architect is also available, as well as our architect, to answer any questions that commissioners might have. So thank you.
Thank you. Commissioners, do you have any questions specifically for the applicant before we start discussion? Commissioner Johnson?
Hi. I run through this park 4 or 5 times a week now that the gyms are closed. So I am very familiar with this park. I always see the signs up that say the future of the park is being planned, be part of the conversation, and I never kind of followed up on that. So I'm so glad to see this is on there. My question is, as I'm running through the park or walking through the park, the tree line, the existing tree line really obscures the stone arch, the Mississippi, and the skyline. So some of the renderings I saw, I thought were, I don't want to say deceiving, but I mean, is it the intent to kind of reduce the amount of trees along the bluff to get a better view of some of those features of Minneapolis, like the stone arch and the skyline and of the river itself?
Well, that's a good question, and certainly I'll mention. I can address that in our landscape architect if she feels my answer wasn't quite spot on. I'm going to let her jump in too. But ideally, I think that we would love to be able to maintain views as best as possible. When Sasaki designed this park, the vegetation wasn't as it is today, and so he did have several locations near the bluff that were areas just to sit, contemplate, look out across the river, look towards downtown. We would still like to try and maintain the best that we can, but in our vegetative management plan, which I'll talk about here, we basically don't have anything in place where we come in and we preserve views, which is unfortunate. I mean, if you were to go up and down the river in spots along like West River Parkway, you will see benches that are on top of the bluff looking out towards the river, but you've got an obscured view because the trees, the vegetation along the bluff has grown up. And our forestry department basically has generally has stated that they don't maintain view sheds, they just kind of maintain what is needed in terms of quality of tree and plantings of trees. So I guess I can say it's an open conversation we'd like to have with them, because I think there are some view sheds within this park that would be nice to open up again like they were back in the late 70s. And so I'm hoping that we can do that a little bit with this project and work with our forestry department to kind of find the common ground where we can provide some view shed to the city, because it is very stunning. The park is stunning, and the views you get out towards the river and across the river towards downtown are quite stunning as well.
Yeah, I mean, it has amazing potential. It seems like it's the bluff has overgrown, so it's good to know.
Thank you for the question. Commissioner Johnson, are there any other commissioners who have questions for the applicant? Not seeing any. Let's open it up to general discussion. Are there any concerns or comments on the proposed projects that commissioners would like to bring forward? Otherwise, I'm going to go through each of the questions one by one. Commissioner Johnson?
Sorry, it's me again. I am not
That's good. That's good.
Architect, not a landscape architect here. So I was really curious about that. This Hideki Sasaki, if I'm pronouncing that right. I know he designed the park in the 1970s. I know that he was a master landscape architect. I guess my question to maybe anybody else who's knowledgeable about landscape architecture is, what features were there any groundbreaking features that he incorporated into Father Hennepin Park that are there now? And does the new plan incorporate them into that?
I think that's a really good question. And this is what I think I'm gonna do with that question. So Charlene, if you could maybe address the first part of Commissioner Johnson's question about sort of maybe some significant pieces of Sasaki, the design. And then Julie, if you would be ready to maybe talk about incorporation into the current plan, if we could do that, that would be great.
This is Charlene, and in terms of Sasaki's plans, the firm, there's some history of the firm in the report that we did, talking about the how Sasaki was in the 60s and 70s very innovative in having an integrated practice. So instead of just looking at landscape, he had planners, he had architects, he had a whole team approach to looking at design. And they also became very famous for waterfront designs. And when they were doing the Father Hennepin Bluff work, they were sort of in the middle of doing other projects. They did Boston Harbor, which is a big one, and some other ones on the East Coast. And in terms of the specifics on this project, they also, I should mention, they were hired to do the entire riverfront master plan for Minneapolis, which was huge, and I think is sort of reflected in the ultimate outcome of the project. The Sasaki had been in town before. They worked on the gardens, the landscape at the Towers complex, which was an urban renewal project right over across from the post office. And so they were kind of a known entity. In terms of the actual design of Father Hennepin Bluff, to your question about uniqueness, no, it's not outrageously innovative or anything like that. It's just a good, solid example of the firm's design. And then I'll turn it over to Julie.
And I'll speak to some of the elements that were prominent in our work with the conceptual design for the project. As Charlene spoke to, and John as well when he introduced the project, the Sasaki design, kind of first and foremost, is an introspective design, and at the time that the park was designed and installed, much of the surround was industrial, and the park was designed with berms and heavy vegetation in clusters of threes, and he created these beautiful spaces internal to the park to bring people inward and kind of buffer the surround. And while we know that, now the context and the use for the park have changed over time, some of the character and elements within the park we felt were very important to maintain. I think first and foremost, this notion of these rooms that he created, and he did this by designing pathways throughout the park that sort of created these spaces which were defined as rooms, and I think we absolutely want to retain that as much as possible. And so certainly the kind of west half of the park we're trying not to modify at all, and then on the east end of the park where the central lawn space is shown, that was an area of the park that was designed with a couple of rooms, but yet those rooms were open and intended to support open and gathering for the overlook structure that was originally installed in the park. And so we wanted to also be in keeping with kind of designing the gathering space in keeping with that original intent. We intend to retain the original overlook feature. As John mentioned, there were a series of overlook areas planned and designed at the time the Sasaki Park was developed. And with time, obviously, some of the vegetation, as we talked about, has filled in, and some of those spaces are not as much of an overlook at this point. And so we may think a little bit about what does that mean for how those spaces evolve. But we do want to be sure to retain the original structure that was a prominent focal point in the park, and that is intended to remain as such in the design. We also intend to retain in keeping with some of the materials and furnishings that were of the Sasaki design period. And so thinking about lighting,
styles and designs, and the way that we think about materials and forms that would comprise everything from benches to litter receptacles to coloration on pavements and so forth. And so seating and lighting and anything that would be kind of a furnishing element to the site, we want to make sure that those features are considered to be kind of in keeping with the character of the overall plan from the Sasaki time. And I think the last thing I would just mention would be in terms of kind of the vegetation. We talked a little bit about the bluff area, but on the site proper, we do intend to keep as much of the vegetation as we can that's existing. I'm referring to tree canopy. And then for areas where we would be enhancing the tree canopy or maybe replacing trees that do need to come out to support the development, we would be intending to carry forward that sort of naturalized informal planting character. So that's the intent for how we would look to kind of enhance and carry forward some of those original character elements in the park design. Thank you.
Well,
Thank you
thank
all.
you for thank you for expounding on what you had in your report. I appreciate that.
Does any other commissioners have anything to say at this point? Commissioner Bjornberg?
Yeah, I have a few comments and questions. First off, I was like really excited to read through the report on this. I felt like, oh my gosh, this little gem in our own backyard that I know nothing about. So I really appreciated all the context that kind of helped provide. And I also appreciate kind of the walkthrough of kind of the planning and the things that you guys have been considering as you have been designing it. I think that one of the reactions that I had looking at the initial design is that I really want to know more about materials and also kind of the relation between the existing pergola at the overlook and the new proposed bandshell. I also kind of want more developed renderings that show how this new structure fits in with the surrounding landscape, and how does it look with the bridge and kind of the buildings that are in that area. I was also really surprised that this isn't individually recognized, which also kind of made me think, okay, we should not be focusing too much on what the original design intent is if we were really kind of trying to focus on how this impacts the district. And then I also was curious if there is any like regrading or if the pathways are changing, but not the kind of topography.
Okay, so Commissioner Bjornberg, I can start on that, and then I'll just let the team kind of come in if needed. I kind of jotted down a few of your thoughts there as you were talking, so hopefully I can kind of, hopefully I remembered what you were asking about. In terms of materials, we're not, I mean, since we're so early on in this process, just at this concept stage, we haven't delved into a lot of that, but we are very much still, in our thoughts, thinking about materials and how things can be brought into the park that would fit with the character of the district. Julie and the rest of the team kind of did some work early on in concept, in schematic design, looking at character materials, and in the report, again, I'm sorry if this is wrong, but for me it's page 10, where it kind of shows just some of those proposed maybe elements that we would be providing in the park with some types of different enhanced pavement materials, limestone seating that might sort of fit again with the character of the bluff, the region. So we have definitely started thinking about materials a bit to try to figure out sort of how things could work on the design and fit with the character of the St. Anthony Falls Historic Preservation District. So just kind of a quick little piece on that. Our architect Michael Rohr I think can definitely answer some questions about the character of the proposed pavilion. Regrading, we definitely will be doing some regrading in the park. We have some stormwater issues that we need to address. One of the characters of this concept plan calls for a dry creek bed that would basically kind of connect up the nature play area and then kind of run in parallel with the top of the bluff over towards, generally over towards the entrance to the Stone Arch Bridge. And so the idea there is, again, kind of using materials that would certainly be characteristic of the area, so they kind of blend in and fit, but then also kind of addressing some issues with, seasonal ponding of water that certainly don't function very well in the park right now. So the level of grading is kind of undetermined, but we definitely will be doing some regrading, and we definitely have some regrading to do with the kind of new configuration of some of the pathways that would be proposed as part of the project.
Thank you. That is very helpful. Commissioner Kling.
I think this sounds like a really exciting report, and I agree with the other commissioners that I think maybe we should talk about how the Sasaki design of the park can maybe be a part of the park's future. I think just even in the case of the context of the St. Anthony Falls Historic District, it sounds like the original park design could be an important part of the story of how this historic district became what it is today, from being a mostly industrial area to being an area that is used for recreation and many other uses. And because this design sounds like it was a good example of not only that firm's work, but also of the kind of landscape design that transformed the Mississippi waterfront in Minneapolis, I would be excited to see references to that design to be retained as much as possible. Obviously, in consideration with the ways that uses in the park have changed over the years, but I do think that it sounds like the original design of the park maybe should play an important role in how it continues to be designed into the future.
Thank you, Commissioner Kling. And I have to agree, my biggest concern about this design is the fact that we're essentially losing the Sasaki design. And despite all of the great intent to be inspired by and be referential to the design intent of the park, the actual design and what's left of the historic materials and design will be mostly lost. So the commission is kind of stuck in two spots. We have to look at this from the perspective of the district, and I think we have some good guidance related to how design can impact the district, and I do want to get to the 5 items that staff would like feedback on. But we also have the issue that has to do with the actual Sasaki design. I think that the report lays out a very good case for saying that Sasaki design could be locally designated individually as a historic site. And so that complicates the design process in quite a bit for the design team. And I appreciate that you're dealing with both of those things. So before we get too far, I want to get to these 5 points. Staff specifically requested for feedback on the proposed positioning of the new bandshell. Do any commissioners have anything specific to say related to the positioning of the new bandshell? And if you have thoughts in relation to the Sasaki design, that's great, or else in relation to the district as a whole and the relationship with the Stone Arch Bridge. Commissioner Sandbolt.
Hi. So I think the location of the bandshell looks fairly good to me. It looks like there's also some structures planned for the north edge of the park. And I did see that there were structures in that area historically. And so just wondering what the approach will be for siting those structures along the north side, and what kind of mindfulness we'll have if anything is discovered at those sites.
I think that's a good question for the applicant as they continue to move forward, and that kind of relates to the archaeological assessment question, I believe, the number 5 in the list of questions. And that was, staff is looking for feedback on the archaeological survey and the recommendation that additional archaeology be warranted. I personally appreciated Mr. Ninau's second recommendation for archaeology, which was finding out where the ground disturbing activities would be and doing additional research there. Did you have additional thoughts on that, Commissioner Sandbolt, or anybody else?
I do think that that would be appropriate to do a little more archaeology investigation, just to figure out where those buildings that were pre-existing on the site were and what remnants may remain of those. And I don't know if there was any information when the development in 1978 was done, if there was any information left over in documents from there that might inform what was removed at that time or what was encountered at that time.
I would hope the archaeologist and Charlene Rice have been able to dig up some of that information. Anything else, Commissioner Sandbolt?
Yeah, this is Charlene. I can just comment on that.
Great, thanks.
The Sasaki plans, actually, we did find them, and but there's absolutely no information about any archaeological things. They just were not even thinking about that at all. Ninau did an extensive literature review, which you saw, and identified where there probably are, well, there's potential archaeological findings. And I think the idea of basically digging as needed where there's going to be ground disturbance is a great concept, and that's, I think, what the park board is intending to do.
Great, thanks, Charlene. Commissioner Bjornberg?
Yeah, I guess I would just kind of support what everyone else is saying and sort of trying to focus where any other additional archaeology would happen, to not do more archaeology than is necessary, to kind of leave what's in the ground unless you are going to be disturbing it. So I appreciated that recommendation.
Great, thank you. How about the effect of the performance area placement may have on this section of the park? Do any commissioners have any specific comments related to the performance area placement for staff? Don't all speak at once. Maybe we'll come back to that one. Overall alteration in the landscape design, I think I've already mentioned my concern about losing the Sasaki design and the character defining features of that. Are there other comments? I think the grading will become an important thing for us to see in the final application, is how much grading will be done that will be changing that park landscape. And what about the association to the Mississippi River? Oh, Commissioner Bjornberg.
Sorry.
That's okay.
I would just kind of echo that it feels like we are really losing something to be losing all of those different rooms. So I guess I would like personally to sort of see if it's possible to kind of bring in these new uses and accommodate this new function of the park while still retaining those rooms in some way, whatever that might look like.
Thank you, Commissioner Bjornberg. Commissioner Sandbolt?
Yeah, I'll speak a little bit. I think one of the things that I'm concerned with this plan is the dry creek bed. I don't think that there's any indicators that there was originally a ravine or a creek there, and I think I have a little bit of a heartache about creating something that might be considered, false history, basically, that it's a remnant of something that was there originally. And maybe I just missed that there was something on this site, but if there was a ravine that was on this site, I'd like to use that as inspiration for where that dry creek bed goes. And if there's not anything like that, I would maybe want to consider a different sort of natural play area that kind of follows more of that room concept, where it's an area, not a linear element in the site.
Great point. Any other commissioners? We haven't really talked about the association to the Mississippi River. I know Commissioner Johnson had questions about the vegetation. Maybe, did you have anything more to say about that? Not to put you on the spot.
No, I don't think so. I mean, I can actually literally see the park from my apartment. No, I think that's it. I think the park is, I think we've echoed, or we've said this ad nauseum already. It's such a beautiful location, and it needs some TLC. So, yeah, I mean.
Thanks, Commissioner Johnson.
Sorry,
Staff,
I don't have anything more to add.
No, it's okay. Staff, do you feel like you have enough from the commission for information to help you with the next part of this review?
Definitely, yeah. It's all been very helpful, and we've been taking notes, so.
Great. Well, then I think we'll close this portion. There's no action that needs to happen at this point, so I'm going to ask our chair to step back in and take over the meeting from me.
Briefly, if I may, Vice Chair Howard.
Yeah.
It looks like Stady also wanted to speak. Stady, did you, Commissioner Stady, do you want to chime in?
Yeah, sorry. Thanks, I missed that.
I just wanted to say I like the placement of the bandshell. When you walk through there now, it's always felt like an awkward place where it is. I feel like this is kind of a nice tucked in spot next to where the bridge is, and the addition of the restrooms I think is wonderful too. So I just want to add that. Thanks.
Thank you, Commissioner Stady. Sorry, I didn't see your thing. My meeting chat keeps kind of bouncing up and down, so I have to keep scrolling it. So I think that's it, unless anyone has anything else they'd like to add. Hearing none, would the chair like to come back in?
Thank you, Commissioner Howard. So that wraps up the discussion items. Do the commissioners or staff have any announcements or other commission business to discuss?
Staff has no announcements at this time. Thank you. This is Andrea Burke. Forgive me.
It's okay. Thank you, Andrea. Commissioners, are there any announcements? Commissioner Howard.
Not that I want to come back on camera, but I just want to let folks know the state of Iowa is doing a huge preservation conference just in a couple weeks, and they're doing it all via Zoom. I know you're excited about it. The good thing is it's only $20, so if you have any interest, go to the State Historic Preservation Office in Iowa and take a look at their agenda. There are some people from Minnesota speaking, including some folks from Hess Royce speaking on our wonderful Minneapolis music survey, and I'm speaking as well on properties of the recent past. So it's a great learning opportunity, and you don't even have to leave your living room.
Thank you. I guess on a similar note, I don't know if anybody else attended the National Trust's webinar today on the virtual public meetings. I did. I thought it was really interesting. They are going to have a part 2 webinar on June 11th. If anybody feels like participating in that, it's going to be interviews, it sounds like, maybe of some sort with people from other commissions across the country. So maybe maybe it'll be interesting. And the National Trust is actually doing a series of different sort of webinars on preservation topics if you go to their website. So I guess I would recommend that as an opportunity. Any other announcements? I don't see any. So with that, we have completed all items on the agenda for this meeting. I will do one last call if there are any other matters that anyone feels need to come before the meeting. Okay, I don't see any. So without any objections, I will declare this meeting adjourned. The next regular meeting of the HPC is on June 9th, 2020.